Assessment, whether it is self-assessment or an assessment made by another, is an ongoing feature of our lives. From almost the moment we are conceived, we are assessed. And these assessments continue throughout our lives across a vast variety of platforms as we are measured against any number of benchmarks. Even after life, some believe the assessing continues. So as you can see, our lives, and possibly deaths, are full of assessments. Of all the assessments we undertake throughout our lives, those which help us to improve are, in my opinion, the most valid. This presentation is going to examine the assessments that take place here, in the classroom, particularly relating to the philosophy that I place on assessments. Examining how assessments should be delivered, the motivation for using them, and, most importantly, the ways in which the results can direct and improve future teachings and learning. In classroom assessment, the two most commonly used forms are formative assessment and summative assessment. The two differ in their motivation for use, when they are employed, and how their outcomes can improve learning and instruction. Both are valuable tools to teachers when used correctly. Now let's look a little more closely at the differences between the two. Summative assessment is used at the end of a unit of work, as a summary to what has been learned. This shows the teacher what the students have achieved when compared to the benchmarks or outcomes decided before the unit commenced. This is usually the type of assessment that students are graded on, showing it to be assessment of learning. These results can guide future instruction. However, the process of assessing at the end of a unit does not allow an opportunity for intervention to occur on students' learning during lessons. Formative assessment, however, does, making it a critical tool to aid learning in the present, allowing students and teachers to improve themselves within the lesson, not after it. This distinction is a critical one, as many studies have shown that continuous assessment, where correction and modifications can be made, is vital in improving educational outcomes. This is assessment for learning. Related to formative assessment is diagnostic assessment. Some believe that these two types of assessments are combined. However, I take the view of my current university tutor, that being they should be considered separate and used accordingly. Whereas formative assessment is used to show the progress of learning, diagnostic assessment is a tool teachers should use to identify what may be impeding learning. Understanding the cause of a student's struggle in a particular area can highlight to teachers what areas of instruction they may have to modify. These adjustments can help students overcome their difficulties and progress to the next stage of learning. Through the use of continuous formative assessment, diagnostic assessment when there seems to be an impediment to learning, and eventually, summative assessment at a program's end, teachers can monitor, intervene and change their instruction as their students require. A novel way of describing the use of these types of assessment together is to compare it to that of a chef making soup. Without one, the others are not as effective, as will be shown. As a chef is making soup, they are constantly testing it to see if it needs any seasoning or other flavors added. This can be seen as formative assessment. Once the soup is made and sent to the customer, what the customer thinks of the soup can be thought of as summative assessment. If the chef is having problems with the soup's color or consistency, she may look at the ingredients she has used and see if there are better alternatives. This would be viewed as diagnostic assessment. This type of comparison is not really relevant to classroom assessment, but it shows the concepts of these assessments and how they relate to an everyday situation. With any classroom assessment philosophy, self-assessment must be included. This is not only for the teacher to assess their own contributions, but an opportunity should be afforded to the students to make critical examinations of their own learning. This allows them to foster an understanding of their own abilities and helps them make decisions for their own learning well-being. It gives students the impetus to direct their own education. Used together, this is how I see the foundation of assessment working. The ongoing and critical analysis of what is occurring within my classroom is the only way I can ensure that the instructional direction is developing for the benefit of all students.
Created using Powtoon.